we are excited to welcome the Honorable Jennifer Granholm, Secretary of Energy, who will provide introductory remarks before participating in a fireside chat moderated by Caroline Hyde, news anchor for Bloomberg Technology.
Let me start out by thanking SCSP for convening you all here on this incredibly important topic. And I'm really thrilled to be able to talk about, that's better. Can you hear me now? So thanks to SCSP for convening us all here on this really important topic that is, it is extremely hot in terms of relevance right now. And so I appreciate the chance to sort of kibitz with folks who have their feet in the AI world every day and are thinking about these things too. We are blessed at the Department of Energy to have 40,000 public scientists that are working on these issues, but as you know, leadership also requires outsight, not just insight. And so those conversations with those who are on the ground doing this work is so incredibly valuable. So thank you for that. Let me just start by saying I want to talk about the role that federal policy is playing in this idea of adding power to the grid to be able to fund the data centers. We've been doing a lot of listening in terms of what the hyperscalers are saying they're going to need in terms of power demand. And we've also listened to those who are in the nonprofit area and in the energy sector. So for example, the North American Electric Reliability Corporation has said that the demand for power from data centers in the next 10 years will create a 15% increase on the grid. Some in the private sector, some hyperscalers are saying, no, it's much more than that. Some are saying, all of these chips, NVIDIA, everybody is becoming much more efficient. What is the net number that we need to be looking at in terms of how much power to add to the grid? Fortunately, Lawrence Berkeley National Lab is actually doing a study that's going to be out by the end of this year that takes all of this into account to get the latest data on what we need to add to the grid. But suffice it to say, as we've done modeling inside of the Department of Energy, we have been accounting for the fact that we know there is this increased power demand. The big goal in the Biden-Harris administration, you're probably aware, is to create a power grid that is powered 100% by clean energy by 2035, 100%. And in order to do that, we have to take into account what the growing demands are, not just from data centers, but from obviously electrification of transportation and all of these incredible manufacturing facilities that are coming online as a result of the policy that was adopted inside the Biden-Harris administration. And I'm going to talk about that in one second. But our numbers show that we basically have to double the size of our electric grid, adding thousands, 2,000 probably, gigawatts of clean power on the grid to get to that goal and include the notion that there is growth in demand, right? Demand growth. So that's a lot. That's a lot. And we hope that, well, first of all, I just want to share with you what has happened as a result of the passage of the Inflation Reduction Act and the bipartisan infrastructure law on the ground. So our goal is really to grow the amount of clean energy on the grid. Just this year, for example, as a result of the incentives embedded in the Inflation Reduction Act, it has made America irresistible to clean power developers. And just this year, we will add 60 gigawatts of clean power to the grid. That's 30 Hoover Dams worth of clean power being added to the electric grid just this year. In solar, it is twice as much as was added last year, which was another record year. So the trajectory of growth of clean power on the grid is happening. And we are grateful that many of the hyperscalers, many of you who are affiliated with them in this room, have said that they're committed to building these data centers using clean power. That's great. And many have also said they're committed to building these data centers using clean power that is not socialized on the rest of the customer base. In other words, that there is a commitment to being able to being willing to pay a green premium for additional power being brought to the grid. Now, if that's news to some of you, that would be a shame, because I hope everybody understands the importance of data centers bringing their own power with them in order to avoid a backlash. Because if that extra power cost is put on everyday citizens, then there will be no desire to see these data centers permitted and placed in the United States. Many of the hyperscalers realize this. Many of the data center companies have said, we are willing to do this. But I will say, we are also here as a department and certainly as a federal government to be able to help. Let me share some examples. First of all, these federal incentives that I've described. If you get a 30% tax credit for building your project using clean energy, bringing that clean energy power, that clean power project, and you locate your project on a former coal site, for example, coal power plant, you could get up to a 50% tax credit because of locating there. Embedded in these laws is not just an incentive for powering data centers with clean, or powering anything with clean, but it's also an incentive for revitalizing communities that have been left behind in this energy transition. And so former coal power plants, former nuclear power plants that may have decommissioned, those kinds of sites, you get extra incentive for locating power adjacent to it. One example of that is in Minnesota, Xcel and Sherco mine plant. That was a coal mine that had the capacity of over 2 gigawatts, right? Bigger than a Hoover Dam. And now Xcel is going to be using that site to put clean energy on and hopefully to pair with a data center. That's what we're talking about. There are scores of those kind of sites all across the country. And guess what? They are connected. They're connected to the grid already. So you don't have to worry about that. They're connected to transmission already. So it's an easier play than perhaps locating in a greenfield site that's not already connected to transmission. So with the investment environment improved, because we always say this clean energy transition is private sector led, government enabled. And so the enabling legislation to be able to provide these incentives being very important, but private sector stepping up is obviously very important as well. The creativity that many are using to be able to bring new power onto the grid is terrific. So you saw the announcement last week, perhaps, of Microsoft and 3 Mile Island Constellation being able to repower a former nuclear plant to be able to power data centers. Great. That kind of stuff we love to see, as well as, for example, Google is being creative about using what are known as green tariffs to essentially pay that premium to a utility to get them, in order for that utility to build out clean that can be used for a data center. That kind of rate structure is an important tool as well. And then obviously a lot comes down to the creative partnering that needs to happen. So this is a complicated realm. You've got utilities, you've got local governments, you've got state governments, you've got permitting, you've got obviously any potential environmental issues. We want to make sure that we bust through some of that in partnership with those who are building data centers. And let me be clear, we want these data centers built in the United States. We need them built in the United States for national security reasons, if nothing else, especially AI data centers, learning data centers. So we are excited about some of the interesting pairings that have gone on. We want to add clean baseload power to the grid, and some are partnering, for example, Meta and Sage Geothermal are powering to use enhanced geothermal, the heat beneath our feet, to be able to power the data centers. Google and Fervo, same thing. All this power that's west of the Rockies to be able to do that. And then looking ahead, we have, there's a bill that's pending in Congress. The Department of Energy has put out a proposal called FAST, and that acronym, where is it? Here, wait. Frontiers in AI for Science, Security, and Technology. It is not, you can't deal with the federal government without an acronym. So that FAST proposal, which is embedded in what Congress is considering in this AI bill, is really important because it does a couple of things. First of all, there is a recognition that we have 17 national labs at the Department of Energy, and we've got the biggest exascale computers in the world. And so we use AI inside the department a lot, but we also have the largest public data sets in the world, scientific data sets, public lands data sets, you name it, we've got them. So we want to make sure that we're able to make all of that data AI ready. We want to make sure we have test beds that are able to allow startup companies to improve their chips. We also want to make sure that we are using AI for good, for the public good. And so that bill, FAST, will help to do that, including, we hope, start to fund some of the additional researchers that we'll need we need an army, basically, of researchers and data scientists in the federal government to wear the white hat and to make sure that AI is being used for good and not nefarious purposes. So we want to partner to make that happen, and that's what part of FAST is about. Bottom line is, I always say in the energy space, because of these incredible bills that have been passed, the Inflation Reduction Act and the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, we're in the middle of energy history, clean energy history being made. And this is in parallel with the history that is being made in AI. And the two are braided together as one. I hope you sense the incredible moment that we are in. I mean, this stuff is flying so fast, as you know, that it's hard to know how we're going to be able to rein in or steer. It is just happening so fast. But because this is early-ish, we are still in this phase of shaping the rules of the road. And we just want to make sure that we do it in a way that has our children and our grandchildren looking back on the other side of this transition and saying, yes, you made history, and history for good. So thank you for working with us on this. All right, let's have a conversation.
Fast in acronyms, fast in nature. Does the private sector, Sam Altman, Jensen Huang, you were just at a roundtable with them this month, do they think you're going fast enough?
Well, nobody ever thinks the government's going fast enough, that's for sure. But I do think that they appreciate the fact that we are, first of all, every data center, every company is a little bit different in what they need. I mean, Sam Altman, his company Oklo just signed an MOU with our Idaho National Labs to have the first modular reactor from Oklo build out to be able to power data centers. That's great. That's his. Microsoft has a different strategy. Google has a different strategy. Meta has a different strategy. Everybody's got a different need, perhaps, and a different idea about how they want to do it. But here's the thing. The White House recognizes that permitting, for example, and the challenges associated with utilities and rate paying they're all bound together. And we in the White House, certainly our agency we've got relationships on all of those levels, and we want to take the hyperscalers hand in hand and say, how can we help? We have all of this land that is available that you can get extra credit on, as I was describing. We have the ability to crack through some of the relationships that may be more difficult at a local level. So we want to create a concierge service, basically, for hyperscalers to be able to bust through whatever it is they need to get these data centers built in the U.S.
Are they being realistic? You just talked about 60 gigawatts in 1 year. Phenomenal number. Sam Altman wants multiple 5 gigawatt data centers. Is that realistic?
Well, is it realistic to have 5 gigawatts powering a data center? Absolutely. 60 gigawatts in 1 year. I mean, we want to add all of those gigawatts, and we know that we can. I mean, we know that if we can get these data centers, and I appreciate Sam Altman's focus on nuclear, right? And he's obviously focused not just on fission, but on fusion. But we want to see these hyperscalers band together, potentially, for those who are interested, and order a 12-pack of small modular reactors so that we can build them at scale and not do this sequentially. We know that everybody's leery of being the first of a kind, and everybody wants to be the nth of a kind or the fifth of a kind. Okay, let's get through all of that and order them together so that you can actually do the build together. You can, because do you really care what kind of clean power you get, as long as it's reliable, clean baseload power? So it seems to me there's an opportunity there for some collaboration across the industry as well as with government.
Do you care where the money comes from? Sam Altman has been busy trying to raise funds from the Middle East, we understand. Does that matter to you?
Here's what I would say. We don't, money is green, but I do think it's important to have, what's the access, I guess, for those who are funding to very sensitive IP, right? I mean, these advanced chips are, the GPUs for AI can be used for a variety of things. And we want them to be used in the right way. And so does that mean you get access to the IP? That's a question. But we want these data centers built in the US, as I mentioned. So however they get funded, as long as that there's some boundaries on it, I think it's perfectly fine.
Do we need more regulation in that area, in AI more generally?
Well, I do think regulation is is always a question, because you want to make sure that it is done in a thoughtful way, and sometimes that takes a while. We're more interested in making sure that the chips themselves are staying in the U.S., or if there is the building of data centers overseas, that there are real boundaries on the potential for dispersion of those. And we're also, this is not, it's about national security, but it's also about competition, right? We want to lead the world in AI, and we are, and we want it to stay that way. And so we don't want to, we don't want to create constraints on that. However, we recognize that unconstrained AI could also be used in a very negative way, and so we want to channel that in the right direction.
Is China the key competition?
Of course.
And how do you think the U.S., from an energy infrastructure perspective, competes there?
Well, we have to be constantly vigilant, right? From an energy point of view, I mean, China has got they're adding a huge amount of clean power to the grid, but they're also adding a lot of fossil to the grid to account for their own economic growth. But we think, we just want to be able in the U.S. to make sure that we are secure from a national security point of view. We're secure from an economic point of view. We're leading from a competition point of view, and we're doing it in partnership with the private sector who are doing these. A lot of these, the hyperscalers that we know of, these are trusted entities, right? They're not wild, but obviously not all of this development is happening within the bounds of trusted entities. So we got to be vigilant. We have to be careful. And I'd be curious. This is why it's important to have conversations like this with folks who are in the industry to say, what would you do? How should we be thinking about regulation going forward? How can we channel this in a way that makes sure that we're protected as a human race from the bad uses of AI?
Do you feel that those private entities are willing to work together in the way that you have just articulated, that they do and will band together for orders, for example?
Okay, well, I'm not sure that they will. We've been putting this to them. Come on, order it up so that we can do this. But I do say that they are, in their own ways, trying to identify where that clean power is coming from. And a lot of them have expressed great interest in these small modular reactors, which is great. A lot of them have expressed interest in long duration energy storage. So putting, 10-hour batteries with solar or wind. That's great. Obviously, I'm a huge fan of enhanced geothermal myself. And I love that there is experimentation and partnership happening in that space, but it is more expensive. All of these technologies are more expensive than what you find on the grid right now. And that's why I get to this point of, because these are entities with deeper pockets, they should be able to bring the power with them and do it in a way that does not create that backlash.
This sort of leadership you show now, will it be bipartisan? Will we be able to see it go past November?
Yes.
Nice, short answer.
Well, I do think everybody wants us to lead, right? Everybody wants us to lead in these technologies. Democrats, Republicans, everybody does. Everybody wants to make sure that AI is used for good.
In a clean way?
If the companies have committed to doing it for their shareholders in a clean way, of course, they should be leading on that. And so, we can do this. We can add the amount of clean power necessary because of these incentives embedded in the Inflation Reduction Act. And unless somebody rolls back all of that, which I don't think is going to happen because it would be political malpractice to undo the Inflation Reduction Act. We just got a letter last week from 14 Republicans in Congress who are saying you can't undo the Inflation Reduction Act because over 60% of the investments, all these factories that are opening up across the country, are going to red counties and red states. And over 87% of these investments are going to counties that have below average weekly wages or below average college graduation rates. That's for all of this manufacturing that's happening, EVs, batteries, et cetera. And all of these members of Congress in rural areas are saying, we're seeing all of this happen. This would be a bad move to undo. And so those incentives, I believe, will be in place for the long run.
We so appreciate you going fast for us. The acronym that I'm not going to test you on. We so appreciate your time, Secretary Granholm. Thank you.
Thanks so much, everybody.